Scott Savin is the chief of Magic City Fronton in Miami. The man responsible for a project that is now in the 7th year, and judging by the latest news, it looks like it's going to be around for a while. What this man has done is something worthy of study. From an obsolete industry like traditional jai-alai in the United States, through reinvention, he has put a product back in the showcase. We are talking about short-cut jai-alai with a different format, and despite initial difficulties, it is rebounding and consolidating. Magic City has reached an agreement with the Seminole Indians so that the competition, which is playing the Fronton, can have access to the Hard Rock platform in Florida, a turning point in the economic future for the interest of the company led by Scott Savin. In the early days, he recruited former athletes from other disciplines and trained them to become professional jai-alai players. Season after season, the level of play has risen as it recruited higher-level players. By 2026, he plans to include female jai-alai players and add them to the roster. Scott Savin hopes that some of the global platforms such as Netflix, Amazon, or YouTube will set the rise on jai-alai to give it an unimaginable dimension. Scott Savin, welcome to Chick Chack. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
It's so great to talk to you because I look up to you, Scott. I think what you're doing down there in Florida, it's amazing. Never happened before in the history of jai-alai, and I'll try to explain it a little bit later. But first of all, Mr. Savin, I'd like to know, when did you get in contact first time with jai-alai in your life?
So I grew up in Connecticut, and we had Hartford jai-alai. And this is back in the early mid-70s, mid-1970s. So I was a fan of jai-alai as a kid growing up. And then we used to come to Florida every winter. So I would go to jai-alai, usually to Dania jai-alai. And then there was a period of time for about 10 years when I really didn't have any contact with jai-alai. But then about 10 years ago, our company ran the casino at Dania Beach. So I got reconnected with jai-alai again. So it's been almost 40 years of being a fan of the sport.
Yeah. What surprised me, Mr. Savin, is that when the industry fails, after almost 100 years, no more pari-mutuel, decoupling and all this and that, suddenly a guy named Scott Savin said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. Why? Because probably you have many labor opportunities besides jai-alai.
Well, I like a challenge, and everyone told me that you can't save jai-alai, and that made me want to save it even more. So I like to be the underdog. So it's a challenge. We're working very hard, but more and more people are understanding what we're trying to do, and so we're getting more support as we go along.
But in the beginning, one morning you wake up and you said, okay, I'm going to give it a try with jai-alai, but from another perspective. Did anybody tell you you're crazy, Scott?
Everyone told me I was crazy. And when I spoke to the players at Dania, and most of them are Spanish players that came from the Basque region of Spain, and I knew that I would have to teach players or find American players. And they told me the biggest challenge was they told me I wouldn't be able to do that. And I understood that kids in Spain, in the Basque region of Spain and parts of France grow up playing jai-alai, like American kids grow up playing baseball or football.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that a good athlete, a very good athlete, could learn how to play jai-alai pretty quickly. And they told me no. And I was like, no, I think that the jai-alai players, people don't understand how good they are as athletes. All the jai-alai players. I've tried to reach out to some of the other professional leagues, football, baseball, basketball. And I said, my players will take on your players in sports other than jai-alai and other than your sport, and they'll win because they're in such great shape. They have great hand-eye coordination. I don't think people understand what a good athlete you have to be to play jai-alai. So my goal was to be able to mix the American players in with the players we had from Spain, from Mexico, from France. And everyone did say I was crazy, but we proved that it could be done.
In the beginning of this project, did you have in mind this format of quinielas, barrel court, teams, and all that? Did you have it in your mind, or it came along the road? See?
So I knew that the parimutuel play would not work. We did focus groups. We brought people together, mostly men, ages 18 to 50, and they didn't really understand jai-alai. They love sports, but they didn't understand jai-alai, and they said it was very complicated. So I knew we had to find a way to play it that they could understand. I didn't have the idea at first. I just knew I had to figure out how to do it. And then everyone seemed to understand tennis globally. Tennis is played everywhere and everyone understands tennis. So as soon as I was able to figure out how to make jai-alai similar to tennis, then I was convinced, yes, we can make this work.
And how about the court? See, because the jai-alai court, you can use another one. You have to build one. The one this side in Magic City Fronton, you have it in your mind. You had it from the first moment, because Scout, this is a short court.
So there were a lot of things that I didn't know about jai-alai. Like, I understood people would look at me and say, what does this American guy really know about jai-alai? He doesn't understand the sport. He doesn't respect the sport. No, I have a tremendous respect for the sport of jai-alai. More importantly, I respect the athletes who play the game. But I knew that we had to make the court smaller to make the game faster, to try and make the points go quicker. So it was a progression of me saying, okay, I know I need a smaller court. I know I need faster points. And then, over the last few years, we keep lowering the pad. I'm sure you've noticed that. People notice. Mm-hmm. We had to start with the pad higher because a lot of the players weren't good enough yet. And we were worried from just a danger aspect. But now we just lowered the pad again before we start this season. And now the pad is probably about the same height as most of the pads, around the world. And the players are at such a high skill level that we feel comfortable doing it. For us, the selling point of jai-alai, there were two: the speed and the danger. It's a very dangerous game and it's a very fast game. So the ability to tell people this is the fastest ball sport in the world, and for them to come and see it on a smaller court, which makes it even faster. That's working for us, and people come and they see it and they understand it. If you go to Dania, Miami jai-alai, I've seen a lot of footage from Mexico City, which I think was one of the largest courts in the world. And the players are terrific, but the game looks slower.
When someone tells you Magic City Fronton is not a real jai-alai, does it bother you?
It bothers me, yes, but I tell them that it will be the real jai-alai, because I think as time goes on, more and more people are going to adopt this, what people are calling short court jai-alai. There's no dimensions or no fixed size for a baseball stadium in the United States. Every baseball stadium is different, but it's baseball. Fenway Park in Boston is the smallest stadium in the league, and you can go to other stadiums where the fences are much further out and there's more room in foul territory, but it's baseball played under the same rules. And that's how I feel about the jai-alai. We play the same rules, We have a smaller court, which makes the game faster. And I think eventually that will become the standard for courts in the future.
Did you have difficulties in getting this car, the walls, the balls, and all this and that?
It was very easy to get the court built. The court was actually built in Spain, and they erected it there, and then they took it down and they shipped it over and they sent people over. So getting the court built was not a problem. The ball was a problem. So we probably tried about 10 different balls before we were finally able to settle on the one that we're using now.
When you start all this, the Fronton is already working, players are playing, betting, and this and that. In any moment, what was the toughest moment at that part of the project? See, did you? There was a moment that you said, "I'm going to give up," or you had it clear in your mind that you will be perseverant, you will continue with this.
I think there were two very hard moments. The first day we played, we called our players professional highlight players. They had only been training for 6 months. And I knew that they were nowhere near as good as the players that were playing at Dania or at Miami or in the Basque region of Spain. But we had to start with those players. So I felt bad because those players, a lot of people made fun of them and they said, "You're not really professional highlight players." But it wasn't their fault because we had only given them 6 months of training. Michael Carballo, who started in the very beginning with us, 2 years after he started playing highlight, he never had a cesta. He didn't even know what the game of highlight was. 2 years after he started in the U.S. amateurs that we played at Magic City, he beat 2 players from Dania. And that's when I realized that with enough time and effort, we could put this group together as one cohesive group. So the players had to suffer a lot more than I had to suffer. And they worked very, very hard. And now I feel like our locker room is the best locker room of any professional sport in the world, because you can go in that locker room and they're speaking English, Basque, French. We have Filipino players. So that's all these languages being spoken, and these 36 players who all play against each other, but they also help each other. And that's something very unique that I learned about highlight under the team format. I think because you never know who your teammate is going to be, everybody wants everyone else to get better. And so very quickly we've been able to get, to the level we're at. And I believe now I've been told, by pretty much everyone around the world that players like Gosheri and Douglas are some of the best, highlight players in the world. So it's very, very satisfying to me.
I must tell you that these original players, they deserve a lot of credit, because I don't picture myself 25, 30 years old trying to start playing professional tennis or golf. So the effort that they're doing, it's amazing. They deserve a lot of credit. You had your court, the players, the balls. How about the quinielas, partidos? Did you have a confrontation in your mind as far as, which suits better for this kind of project?
Well, in order for the league to survive in the long term and be profitable, we knew that sports wagering was what would save the league. To be on things like DraftKings and FanDuel, if you're familiar with those sports wagering platforms. And then recently we got on the Hard Rock platform, which is the only one that's in Florida. So we know the future for the league and survival for the league is all dependent on the battle court format, playing the 2 out of 3 sets where people can bet on who's going to win the match or the set or the point. And the nice thing is the players like the battle court format better than the quinella format, because they like to know that they're out there for a long period of time. And even if they lose the first set, they can come back and win the second and the third set, and they can get in a rhythm. So because the players like the format so much, it makes it a lot easier for us.
Only with battle court is not enough. You have to offer quinielas too in order to get income from betting.
No, we don't have to offer the quinellas. We've done that because there's still mostly an older group of people like myself who grew up in the United States. Jai-alai's 100th year anniversary was last year in the United States. We grew up watching the quinellas. But I think that at a certain point, I don't know if it's, in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, probably everything will eventually be battle court.
You get your income, your financial resources from sponsors, investors, and betting platforms. That's all.
So very candidly, very, very openly with you, the league loses a lot of money every year, and we're a business. So
is it still losing, Scott?
Yes. So we have to find a way to, like every other business, to become profitable. Sports wagering is one of the ways that will help us become profitable. Because we own all the teams in the league, eventually we would look to sell the teams the way soccer teams are sold or basketball teams are sold in the future when we can establish a value. The one thing that we need, for us, the key is to get global distribution on a major platform like a Netflix or an Amazon or a YouTube, something like that has full global distribution. So that's, now we feel like we have the best players in the world. We have a great format. We have 750,000 followers on social media. So now it's trying to find a global distribution platform so that we can get to profitability.
And nowadays, when you try to sell jai-alai to these team owners, what do you offer them? What's your argument?
So the way ownership works now is we only let you buy the team for one season. And what happens is if you purchase the team, we sell the teams for $100,000 for one season. If your team wins the championship, you will get $200,000 back. There's only 6 teams in the league, so you have a 1 out of 6 chance, hopefully better than 1 out of 6 if you are good with your drafting of players and if you have a good general manager or someone who can really help the players learn to play the game better and develop strategy. So it's for people that want to take a risk and would like to own a professional sports team, but you're not paying hundreds of millions or billions of dollars like the big franchises are selling for.
You have also investors like Pitbull, the musician. Is that right? Is that so?
Yes. Pitbull invested in the league. He's invested in a lot of different things, but he's from Miami and he knew about jai-alai, so he wanted to invest in the league. So he did that. We're hoping that he'll get more involved over time. Right now, his involvement has been minimal other than just investing in the league, but he has a school in Miami, a charter school, and we're actually meeting with them next week, and potentially within a year or two, maybe we can build a small fronton or just a court there where kids can learn how to play jai-alai.
I was going to ask you about that. See, it seems like the project is consolidating, right? It's already 6 years on the road. The 7th one is coming. You're right.
Yes.
I don't know if you know that most of the frontons throughout the history of jai-alai didn't last 6 years.
I didn't know that.
That's like I tell you, see, because we always say, well, the fronton in La Habana, Mexico City, Madrid, I'm talking about more than 100 years ago, right? Like 150 years ago, and they were like, the best size, so to say. Best players used to go and play there, but there have been many places in Italy, in France, throughout South America that didn't last 6 years, not at all. So you deserve a lot of credit because I have the feeling that your project, even though you're losing money, is consolidating, right? And
yes,
probably the worst is something related to the past, and the best is yet to come, right? Is that so?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're 100%.
How about core changes? Because It's very spectacular. I follow the games through YouTube, and the short court, the way you guys produce TV, it's much better than in the large court. So that's a good point. See, but sometimes I have the feeling that the points are too long. See, are you thinking in some way of taking measures to, there is no chula, no chick-chack, can be fixed?
So you're right, and some of the points we see where the points have gotten too long. So we're very fortunate that we have Stu Nyman as our announcer, and Stu's been around High Life for his entire life, and J.R. Arasate as the player manager. So I have people that really a great player and people that have been around High Life their entire lives. So we keep lowering the pad because we all think that if we continue to lower the pad, we'll be able to shorten the points. And they very much believe in that. And then we'll probably do some experiments, maybe even with a clock, like some other sports have like in basketball, you have 24 seconds or, we would make it longer, but potentially we'll experiment with a clock. But I'm hoping that the players will take advantage of the lower pad. More and more of the front courts are doing that now. We see a lot more what I call drop shots. And I think that the players, as they see the pad get lower, they'll get more comfortable with throwing different types of shots, and the points will get quicker. Okay.
The quality of the roster is improving every year. I must tell you that, year by year, which is good news.
We're very, very happy with that. And we have two new French players for this season, Lalou and Urrutia. And from what we both are very good players, but from what we understand, Urrutia could be a very special player.
Yes, Urrutia is doing real fine in the winter series of Guernica. I don't know if you're aware of that. He's playing the championship. He's doing real good. And I have the feeling that Magic City Court will shoot perfectly for Urrutia in this case. And how about female players? In the Basque Country, there are more and more girls playing jai-alai, and the level of game is improving year by year. Have you in your mind trying to sign up some female players?
The next major change to the league will be adding female players, hopefully in 2026. What we'd like to do would be to add one female player to each team. And then we would be able to have the female players play singles against each other. And then like tennis, perhaps a mixed doubles where, one male, one female player on each team to be able to play doubles against each other. So that's on our wish list for 2026.
Okay, that's good news, Scott. How about the Hard Rock, the agreement with the Seminoles, see? Because if I'm right, Floridians couldn't bet on jai-alai, but now they can. Is that right?
That's correct. We're very much hoping that will make a big difference in how many people will come out to watch the highlight. What would happen to us is when people came in on Friday nights, when we have, the live highlight and the public can come out, everyone was asking me, can I bet? And they weren't able to bet, but we finally reached an agreement with the Seminole Hard Rock. So when the season starts on January 20th, every Friday night when people come out, they can sit there and they can have the Hard Rock app on their phone and they'll be able to bet on the matches, the sets, and actually every individual point if they want.
Is this agreement with the Seminoles, with Hard Rock app, is the turning point what you needed in order not to skin in the game, so to say?
Yes. To us, that was the most important thing that we accomplished last year, was to get this agreement in place with the Hard Rock. And we think it will make a huge difference for this year. Because people do like to come out and they like to be able to bet. And we understand that.
Was that a surprise for you to get an agreement, or you hope it? You knew you were going to happen?
We worked a long time. I didn't know if it would happen. So we were a little bit surprised, but just very happy that now people can come and they can bet.
You mentioned before schools. See, the way I see it is that, as I said, this project, it seems that it's consolidating, right? But the format has changed, but the dependence of revenues from betting is still there, which I'm trying to say. Years ago, when the booming industry in jai-alai was as the party mutuals, right? Miami, Dania, Connecticut Frontons, they depended on the audience because that's where they used to bet, see? And no bet, no jai-alai in the US.
Right.
Aren't we still in the same situation unless the sport is socialized? I mean, not only for bettors, but for young kids, people practicing. After 100 years of higher in Florida, very little is remain from there. You know, you have if I'm correct, a Fronton in St. Petersburg, in Connecticut, but the social roots are non-existent, which is a pity. Does that have a solution, Scott?
It's one of the harder challenges for us. I know you're familiar with Benny Bueno. So Benny has been the champion for years and years of trying to start a program for kids, a youth program. So one of the things that we're hoping we can accomplish with Pitbull, because he owns these schools called slam schools, and they stress sports, which is one of the things. So we're hoping that if we can start there, and these schools have 700 or 800 kids attending. If we could even get 20 or 30 kids interested in learning jai-alai, and we could develop a pipeline to develop players in the United States. You have to start small and eventually become big, but we think that's the way to start.
I guess you're aware of what's happening here in the Basque Country with Guernica, right?
Yes.
3 or 4 years ago, when Dania closed, we thought that was the end of jai-alai, not even in the US, but in the Basque Country too. But hopefully, this social phenomenon in Guernica began, and right now, every Sunday evening is packed, sold out. You can get a ticket. Basque Television is offering these games, and hundreds and hundreds of young kids are going to jai-alai schools, which never happened before. I know that your country, your culture is very different, the way you see sports, or you try to compete with other sports, but just a little bit of that could be a reality also, according to your project.
Absolutely. And we understand, we talk to the people in Spain, we talk to, the people in France, but specifically in the Basque Country. And a lot of the players now want to come over and play at Magic City because it's the pinnacle. And we pay enough money to our players that they can earn a living playing jai-alai, which I know is
because, Scott, you have a 38 player roster. Is that so?
Yes.
Which is amazing, which is nowadays, you won't find anywhere such a roster or 38 players getting their paycheck every month.
It's very important to us. People in the United States, they look at the National Football League or Major League Baseball or the National Basketball Association, and they see these players making millions of dollars because they have these huge TV contracts and sponsorships. But then there's a lot of other sports similar to jai-alai, like lacrosse. There's a Major League Lacrosse. And I looked, and those players earn less than $20,000 a year. So they can't be lacrosse players. They all have to have other jobs. And lacrosse, it's a hobby more than a sport. So we wanted our players to be able to earn enough money to live, and they do. And the first extra money we bring in goes to pay the players more money. We want the athletes to know if they can work hard enough and get good enough to come over here and play on our roster, they can earn a living doing it. So it's very important to us that first dollars go to, and more to prize money. That's one thing that I'll say we stress is the base salary is not a high base salary, but we want to put more and more money into prize money. So there's a premium on winning, similar to tennis or golf, where you really you need to win. We think it's important for people to understand that you get rewarded for winning.
You mentioned before Urrutia that is going to play with your league. Do you have any other player in mind to sign up? With visa or whatever. Can you reach these top star players for the league as well?
Yes. We also have Lalu, who's going to be playing this season for us. But we've been reached out to by all the top players. Of course, Lopez came over and played.
Yes.
Ormaechea came over and played. Alvaran came over and played. So, and they all had very, very positive experiences. So we think the best players in the world, they all want to come over and play 1 or 2 seasons at Magic City. And it's for us, we're very fortunate that we have, players like Douglas and Zuleika and Gosheri and Aratz, who really are, some of the, if not the best players in the world. Certainly on a short court, they're the best players in the world. And I know that, Lopez had a hard first season here, and then he came back for the World Super Courts and they won it. And he told me he had to work so hard to adjust to the court. But he wanted to prove that he could come over here and do it. So we felt good that he ended up winning that tournament.
In this podcast, I interview players that are playing in Guernica. And one of the questions is, will you play in Magic City? And they don't say no. They say, well, you have to be an American citizen or a permanent resident.
No, you don't anymore. The players can come over on an ESTA visa and they can stay 90 days, or they go home they go home in between. But no, you don't have to be an American citizen. It's a little easier for us if you are, but we want the best players in the world. So we're willing to work with anyone so they can come and play.
I have the feeling that you're very loyal with your original players. Are you keep in mind to continue with these guys? They deserve, because they have done a lot of effort.
I feel very indebted to them, because when we had no players, they came from other sports. They quit jobs that they had. We still have several originals from the first season, and some of them have gotten to be very, very good. The one thing I say for all of them is they all work very, very hard. They're playing, they're practicing, and I think that the other thing that people don't understand about jai-alai is how physically hard it is on the body. These players, it's a very demanding sport. The amount of throws and catches. In other sports, they play once a week. Or I look at a baseball pitcher, he pitches and then he doesn't play for 4 days and then he pitches again. Our players might throw 200 or 300 times a night and then they have to play the next day. So they don't get the credit they deserve for just how good athletes they are. But yes, getting back to it, all of our original players, I told them, as long as you keep practicing and as long as you're working as hard as you can, you'll always be a part of the program.
Did anybody ask you to seek and joining forces and trying to do something in common? For instance, with Dania, would it be a possible agreement between Magic City and Dania, or are 2 different fields?
We are willing to work and talk with anyone. All we really care about at the end of the day, number one, is we want jai-alai to survive in the United States. And number 2, we need a viable business. So we'll talk and work with anyone we can to keep the sport alive. We do want to keep playing it under the battle court style. We think that's very important. But we'll talk with the Spanish Federation, the French Federation, there's in Mexico, I think it's in Cancun, they have a fronton and they're training kids to play. We're hoping that we'll get some of the Mexican players when they're old enough. We think that there's a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old. Once they turn 18, if they're good enough, we hope that they'll come and join the program. So yes, we'll talk to everybody.
A short court is unnegotiable. It has to be a short court.
Yes.
Yes.
it's easier to train the players and to get more players on a short court. And it just, for the fans, for the people watching, they like the short court. It makes the game artificially faster. And it's very important to us that the speed of the game is what we can advertise.
Mr. Savin, there are rumors that casino, the Magic City Casino, jai-alai won't be anymore over there. See, that you'll have to find a new site. Is that so?
So we're going to play 2025 at Magic City, and then we will have a new home to play in 2026. Everyone asks me where, and I say, I don't know yet. As soon as we know, we'll let everyone know. We have options, but we want to pick the best possible option.
Could it be possible more than one site? I mean, in two places simultaneously?
Yes.
Let me ask you about the draft. Last Tuesday, you celebrate the draft ceremony. How was it?
The draft was terrific. I love the draft. I tell everyone that the draft is the most important night of the year because I believe that when you leave the draft, you have a pretty good idea about how good the teams are going to be. This draft, because we have a rule in the league that unless you're the number one player on each team, so Douglas, Gaucheri, Zuleika, if you're the number one player on a team, you can stay on that team forever. Otherwise, you only can stay for 3 seasons. So Nicholas and Aratz and Benny had all been 3 seasons on their teams, so they were automatically in the draft. And then we had these 2 new players coming over from France. So if you look at the teams now, there's been a very big change in the teams. And I like that because if you have one team that becomes the best team and they can stay together forever, it discourages everyone else. So we'll see. And not to interrupt you, there was a very interesting draft. I'm just going to talk about 2 teams. The Devils took Nicholas and then Benny, 2 backcourts as their first and second choices. The Warriors had Douglas and then they chose Alex, 2 front courts. Mm-hmm. So there's different strategies that are being used. And some people believe you need to have great front courts, some people great back courts. So it'll be a very good year to see how that works out.
You have 6 teams. It will be possible in the future, more teams?
Yes. If we could, it's hard having more than 38 players. But if we could expand the league to 8 or 10 teams and even potentially 2 cities, we would hope to do that in the next few years.
I was thinking in doing some crowdfunding and presenting a team from the Basque Country. If I get enough money, see, a crowdfunding, you know what I mean?
Yes, please. We would love that.
Will we welcome?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
From the Basque Country. Okay.
Yes. That would be fantastic. You let me know. We'll help.
Which one is your favorite team for the next season?
I really, I'm not supposed to have a favorite.
You should.
Because in the locker room, all the players are very important to me. There's certain players that other than the guys that started in year 1, there's certain players, especially, I guess some of the younger players like Aratz and Benny, who started I think they were 18 or 19 when they started playing for us. And I see them getting better and better. And I feel like, Aratz, he's still very young. He still has room to become a better player. Benny, still very young. So I love watching some of these players develop and just become better players. And so that's what I enjoy the most. And then it's always nice for me when some of the older players come over, like Hormachea, who came over. I had never met him. Incredibly nice guy, just terrific guy. Lopez, such a nice guy. So for them to want to come over, and it's a little bit of a sacrifice. They have to be away from their family, but they want to come over here because they want to play in our program with our players. So to me, that's very special.
You want to know my favorite team for the next season? The Chargers. You know why? Because Dennis Dalton, Il Barba, is in there. El Barba is in there. That's
El
why.
Barba.
El Barba.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Behind you, I see a basket. The fiber-made basket by, I guess, Inigo Gorostola, see?
Yes.
And there is a big booth here about baskets, see? Still, after 150 years, after we are still playing with this problem, always, see? Do you foresee any change? Because I go there and I see all the players playing with traditional basket. How about that? What's your opinion, Scott?
At some point in the future, someone is going to have to be able to manufacture baskets if the sport is going to continue to grow. So I'm hopeful that will happen. You know, it's for me, it's scary. We have one basket maker here, who's also a player, Manny.
Yeah.
So we're very reliant on Manny. We're trying to teach one or two of the other players at least to be able to learn how to repair baskets and things like that. But like everything else, sooner or later, if we're going to grow the league and be in multiple cities and have multiple teams, we're going to have a basket that can be manufactured.
And nowadays, after 6 years, after what you all have been through, how do you foresee the future in the short term? See, what's your feeling after struggling so much? Are you optimist?
I'm a very optimistic person. I hope my hope is that someone at a Netflix or an Amazon or a YouTube, at someone with vision, will look at the sport of jai-alai and say, this is the next great sport and I want to be involved. And they'll reach out to us and we'll form a partnership. You know, we're humble. We don't care about owning the whole thing or owning part of it. We want jai-alai to succeed and to grow. And we want it to become a mainstream sport in the United States. So anything we can do, but we can't do everything alone. We will need help. So we knock on a lot of doors. We make a lot of phone calls. And, you know, we hope that there'll be someone else out there at a high level in American sports that will realize just how great the sport can be. And that's the most fervent hope.
I wish you the best because you deserve it. As I said in the beginning, what you're doing never did it before. Maybe we will go back like almost 100 years ago when Richard Berenson got in charge of Miami jai-alai, and then the Fronton started booming, see? So, as I said, I wish you the best. Have a good luck in the next season, and hopefully we'll have another interview in a year or 2 years, wherever you want, and tell us, how is everything going. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, and let's get that basket team over here.
Oh, okay. I'll pass the word. Okay.
All right, very good.
Thank you so much.
Take care.